Friday morning, right?
Yes.
Quite clear. Little cloud, little shade right here though. Deep down in cold.
Sleep good?
Yeah.
Ready to eat breakfast?
All right, you're ready. Good morning, everybody. It's time for breakfast.
No, we had come up, you know, a few times on this.
We heard about this. All right. Huh? What's wrong?
Guy, everybody else just got one. Look how many Scott got.
Oh yeah, I hope so.
2.
I ain't done a whole lot of training.
Pig. Bruce, wave goodbye because we won't see you the rest of the day.
Bye. See y'all.
Crystal clear. That's pretty. You can't stand long.
You guys want a picture together?
Sure. Appreciate that.
You have to Photoshop that dude, that buddy of yours with the fake leg who's hauling ass.
Yeah, I know. Pretty much the whole trip. He hikes at a very...
Yeah, you have to Photoshop in that fake leg, the guy with the fake leg who's hauling ass up the trail.
Would you mind rubbing some of that on my neck?
I'm telling you.
Stay in it. Don't go through it. You want me to take a picture of you with your picture? With your camera?
No, yours is good.
Hey, my name's Brian. Work here at May Lake High Sierra Camp.
Valley, yeah.
Down.
But it's not too bad, that hike, because you take out a chunk of the vertical really early on while you're still fresh. And that means highways are out here at 6:30 for me. Okay. Good deal? Cool.
I'm Craig Stevens from Tustin, California. It's been great hiking with you boys the last couple of days. I'm just sorry that Sunrise isn't open because we'd be with you for a couple more days.
There you go.
Now the bugs are going to love you. Vogelsang and Merced. Is that where they are? Yeah, straight over there.
I was looking out that way for him.
Sort of that way. Breakfast at the top of the highway. What's that?
Okay, today we hiked from Glen, Aulin to May Lake. It's our second day. Beautiful hike. Wasn't quite as spectacular as yesterday, but it was still beautiful with huge vistas of snow-capped mountains, and we walked by patches of snow off and on all day as we came up huge rock faces to the highest altitude that we've been to yet, which is, what is it, Bruce?
Keep going, I'll tell you.
Okay. There's this huge lake right out in front of us, and it's surrounded by mammoth granite mountains with snow on top of them. And it's awesome, and it's beautiful, and it's cold up here.
9,360 feet.
We're at 9,360 feet, according to my buddy Bruce.
I'm getting my core up.
We'll have a fire tonight. Hopefully not a bonfire in their tent like we did last night. It's going to be colder tonight. It's already colder.
And we got laundry to dry.
If Tim ever gets lost in the woods, just look for the nearest clothesline. Because he's rednecking up that part of the woods. We could have some, if you could put a tent on wheels,
You'd have it.
and then maybe we could block it up in a couple of years.
You can take the hillbilly out of the mountains, but you can't take the mountains out of the hillbilly.
And the Marines had the whole beach closed. Now we just go right through the same gate that Gorbachev and Margaret Thatcher and all those, or whoever was hanging out with Nixon back in the day. It's terrible. You know, 2 summers ago when we were here, we didn't have, I can't remember one mosquito.
We were hiking down.
We weren't here, but
I'm surprised you don't see fish.
come crawling out of your tent with full body
Bugs.
net.
You should see fish down there.
Frankly, Glacier, Aurora, from hiking. I got a picture of it standing show you.
Hey, with that beautiful music right there, dinner is now on your table. Usually during dinner, while you're enjoying your meal, I talk a little bit about the history of the high camps here. But we had a lot of people who stayed over from last night, and I certainly don't want to bore them with the same story. So I was thinking today that maybe we'd talk about something that's more prevalent, more unique to this time of the season. And there is one thing that's going on right now that we've been celebrating a long time. Maybe celebrating is not the right word, but something that we have to acknowledge happening during the season. It's something that's dated back longer than humans have actually been in this area. Dates back thousands and thousands of years, but about 4,000 years ago, the first natives kind of left information to allow us to realize that they were in this area 4,000 years ago, trekking over the Sierras, and one thing that they got to enjoy was this mosquito season that you're enjoying right now. The same mosquitoes, the black snow mosquito that bites all night long, my personal favorite, and the cool weather mosquito are all enjoying this time of year, probably more than you are because they're eating even more than you are tonight. So for 4,000 years, those natives crossed over the high Sierras, and most of them used a local trail that we have just down the road here. Some of you I know were on that local trail today, and some of you might be walking on it tomorrow. And the trail I refer to is the Tioga Road, which was once called the Mono Indian Trail. And for 4,000 years, that's the trail a lot of these Indians took over the Sierras, not to enjoy the food at the high Sierra camps or anything like that, but to really survive, to trade back and forth for shells, trade back and forth for moth larvae and all the great things that people used to survive back then. The mosquitoes still got mostly to enjoy the natives here in the park until about 1849. That was a big year for a change in balance. 1849 with the gold rush, a lot more of the Anglo descent whites came out to this area, causing friction here in our local area just outside the park. Because of that, they formed the miners formed a Mariposa battalion to battle the Indians, and the mosquitoes formed a battalion of their own to battle back and enjoy their score of human blood there. It was this Mariposa battalion that actually used the same road, the Tioga Road, to make it up into the high country and eventually captured Chief Tenaya and his band of Indians just down here at Tenaya Lake, which they graciously named after Chief Tenaya, although it already had a name of its own, the Lake of the Shining Rocks, Piwiak Lake. While the chief was informing the battalion of that, they of course being eaten by mosquitoes. So the mosquitoes continue through the history of Yosemite, although even for the next few years they didn't have that joy of eating tourists, because it wasn't until 1855 that the tourists started to come into the park. And they got to enjoy the blood of Glen Clark, who created one of the first hostelries here in the park, and other pioneers like John Hutchins and all these big families that started the history of Yosemite. A lot of miners started heading over to the east side because silver was really starting to boom on the east side, and the mosquitoes loved that as the miners came by. Soon after that, the mining got so good that a consolidated mine started the Great Sierra Mine up on the crest. And the Great Sierra Mine sunk almost $400,000 into their mine and rebuilding that Tom McGee's Trail into a stagecoach road, so that more people were able to get over the stagecoach road and the mosquitoes were able to eat more and more and more. And as all these people lead to the situation that we have now these days. It was still a dirt road, people still came over, but most people didn't come by stagecoaches anymore because the road had deteriorated so much that they had to ride pack animals again. There were still a few cars coming in that time. Cars started coming into the park originally 1900 was the first car. Cars were banned soon after, actually, 1907, and they weren't allowed to re-enter the park until 1913, and by 1916, when the camps here were opened up, this road was occasionally attempted by vehicles. They would come through, but it was pretty washed out. Park Service was trying to maintain it, and eventually what happened is Stephen Mather bought the road and donated it to himself because he was in charge of Park Service. It's a pretty smooth move for him. I don't know if he can get away with it these days. But that year, DJ Desmond was hired by the Park Service in 1916 to bring all his workers up here to donate blood to the local mosquitoes, and also to build the first 3 High Sierra camps. And they were Merced Lake and Tenaya Lake Camp, and also Tuolumne Meadows, for you folks who stayed there, one of the original High Sierra camps. As the years progressed, the mosquito population didn't diminish. As a matter of fact, in 1924, when they built the next High Sierra camp, it was Glen, Aulin, the mosquitoes were so bad that year that first year they picked up camp, the whole camp, and moved it a mile up the canyon to where it is today. True story. Those mosquitoes were so bad that year. It came close this year. It's coming close some days this year. They're going to move our camp. A similar thing happened when they opened up the next High Sierra camp in the 1930s. It was Booth Lake High Sierra camp. Mosquitoes were an issue. Water problems were also an issue. They usually go hand in hand, mosquitoes, water. And they moved camp. They moved camp a few times higher and higher from Booth Lake. And eventually it got to the point where it rests now on the shores of Fletcher Creek, and they named it Vogelsang. How Vogelsang camp came to rest right there. But that wasn't the worst. It wasn't until 1961 that they actually built a High Sierra camp in the worst mosquito field in the entire park, Long Meadow. Have you guys been there? Long Meadow. It's an inspiring place. It'll inspire you to start at one end of Long Meadow and run all the way to the other end of Long Meadow. And for you folks who are really disappointed that Sunrise High Sierra Camp isn't open right now, let me tell you, that is the heaviest mosquito population you're going to see in the park. And if you were to go there now, you'd probably have to keep your mouth closed and maybe even cover your nose. Because those mosquitoes are so fierce, especially that cool weather mosquito. You would be full by the time you got to camp from eating so many mosquitoes. And that's just a quick history on the mosquito and its intricacies with Yosemite National Park. You had a question?
What type of bug spray would you suggest to use?
While Delaware North Company does not promote any kind of bug repellent, I have a script, I think. You know, the DEET, at some point it does work, but sometimes when we get these packages of DEET, they come up in the elevation and it releases a little bit of that DEET because of the pressure change, and then the plastic turns to like this jelly colloid. And I think, man, I'm not going to spray that on myself. But a couple days later, after getting bit, I think maybe I'm gonna. I would say, you know, get some head nets. I had head nets. They sold out like mosquitoes. So I had the head nets. I'd say wear some good clothes and spray the DEET on the clothes. With the kids, you definitely don't want to spray it on their hands and get a chance to get in their eye. We also have a natural product, and I haven't had very much luck with the natural products in the past. If you put it on really heavy, the mosquitoes stick to you and drown.
Wow, that's a good idea.
Doesn't eating garlic work too?
Eating garlic, and you find there's less people at your table. There you go. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's history. If you guys are all done with your meal, just hold on to your fork because the cook is whipping up some sort of dessert for you tonight.
All right.
And pass your plates on down to the end of the table, and the crew's going to come around.
He's amazing. He knows all those dates and names. I don't know. Can I take your plate?
But hey, mosquitoes are hungry too, you know. You know, that's one thing I've learned since I've been here in California. We have to respect everything in nature, including mosquitoes. You know, they're hungry too. Turn that thing off.
On our crew, and that is our dishwasher. Go to it, Jane. Introduce yourself.
Oh, I thought you were telling me to go away. This is my third summer here. I worked at Glen last summer, and I'm here for the whole summer. And I worked with the Awani this summer. Oh my. And I love it here, and I'll keep coming back for as long as I can.
Okay, somebody?
No. You've been chosen.
You've been chosen. You gotta step up.
Step up so everyone can see. Yeah, look at your name tag. There you go.
I'm Jasmine. I don't really know what to say. I'm just speaking randomly.
Oh, what randomly?
The This is my third summer up here, and I really like it. This is my favorite camp. I've been to Glen, and I can't remember. All I remember is Glen, but I really like this camp more.
Me? Oh, lucky me. I'm Jennifer, and I was your gift tonight. So. This is our 7th year here, I think. We skipped one. Is that right?
7 sounds
God,
right
I
to
haven't
me.
got it right this season yet. I've been here a long time.
But she's a great cook.
Yeah, can't remember things. And then we spent our years in Yosemite since we've been here. Did about 7 years over at Tuolumne too in the 90s, and just love it to death, and able to bring our kids up. And so it's one of our favorite places to be, and I'm glad you guys are here. And I hope you like my cooking because I'm a breakfast cook.
Yay! Hi, I'm Conrad. I'm serving you. I'm still in that process, kind of. This is my 2nd year in the high countries, and I'll be at Merced Lake the rest of the year after this weekend. So if you guys are continuing the loop, maybe I'll even see you there. Mostly from Tennessee. Did I hear there were some Tennessee people here?
Right here.
I grew up outside of Nashville, so but now I'm in California.
So before you go out to see the amazing alpenglow that people have been watching here since probably before we built in 1938, let me remind you about a few things at camp. First of all, what I didn't mention was this our tip jar here. And the reason I do mention it is because these kids do work really hard, and I would be a lame boss if I didn't support them. I see these lame bosses on TV all the time. I don't want to be one of those people. So if you're having a good time, it's because of them. The money goes to the crew here, and it's I'm glad to make that announcement. Other things. Make sure your food gets stored properly. Any scented items get stored properly. We don't really have a big bear issue up here, but we do have a lot of little critters. So before it gets dark, you want to bring your garbage cans out to the front steps, and it'll have a garbage can out there that you can empty your garbage can into, and then it won't bother you through the night. Also, water conservation is a big issue in the High Sierra camps. We're fortunate to have a great water supply out there and a really good system for getting rid of it. Not all the camps are blessed like this one. Glen Aulin, if you've been there, you know they have a allotted amount of water. That's why things work that way down there with the paper products and everything. And we were talking about earlier, Vogelsang has a hard time getting rid of their water because it doesn't percolate through the bedrock very well. So when you're going around camps, if you do notice that there's any leaks, you notice water running and it shouldn't be, please notify somebody in the camp before it becomes an issue. Just in one night, a small leaking toilet can go through 200 gallons of water, no problem. So for a place like Glen Aulin, that's a big hit. Also, fires. If you're going to have a fire in your fire stove tonight, good luck. Those things are pretty exciting, can be the most exciting part of your the best thing to do is kind of build a teepee using the cardboard and the paper and then some of that kindling and eventually 1 or 2 of the bigger pieces of wood. You don't need a lot of the big wood in there. Close everything down, well, close the lid on top, open up the pipe and open up the front, and if you can, reach through the front and light that paper on fire. Keep the lid on until your stove starts talking to you, until it starts puffing at you or breathing at you. At that point it means that your fire is starting to catch, and then you can move the lid aside just a little bit, and that way it'll start to establish itself a little better. Once it's established, just turn it down all the way. There's lots of little holes and pock marks and stuff, and the air will rush right on in there. It won't stop your fire. So that's a short how to do a fire here in the high country. We do have limited oxygen, so sometimes that plays a role. When you're getting up in the middle of the night, we'll just leave it at that. Make sure you hold on to your doors before you let them slam shut. Just hold on to them for a split second, and your tent mates and other camp guests will appreciate that. There is a chance that when you open your door, you're going to see one of our local deer. We don't have a big bear problem, but we do have these 3 deer that run around and run in front of the camp here. They hang out by the bathrooms and they're guaranteed to scare you. So if you're just stepping out of your tent and they scare you, don't let go of your door though. The last thing I want to talk about is checkout time. Got a lot of questions about that. If you're going to stay here during the day and do some short hikes, tomorrow just pack up your stuff and you can bring it on into the dining room here. We'll just store it in here while you're out doing your hikes. But about 9:30 is the latest I let people stay in the tent. And then I come out and I grab Jasmine and we kick you out. That's the way that works. So I hope you all have a good time. Before when you leave, you're going to want to head up to the ridge here because the sunset's beautiful. You can see probably 40 peaks off of that ridge up there if you haven't been up there yet. They used to watch fire fall from that ridge because you can see right down into the valley until they stopped it in the late 60s. So go on up there and enjoy the view, and we'll see you tomorrow morning when the conch shell blows.
All right.
Thank you.
By the way, I'm going to put some wood down there at the MPS fire. We had a fire for the first time last night. Everything seemed to go well. So if you want to gather around that fire later, I'll have a box of wood down there, and you're welcome to start a fire up down there too. Bye. Bye, Tennessee.
Conrad, what year did you graduate?
99. This is my 10-year anniversary. It was just our 10-year reunion just a couple days ago. I missed it.
What?
What's your last name?
Yes, Celine Dion.
What's your last name?
Maurer. M-A-U-R-E-R.
Maurer.
Have a name for you?
From Henderson.
My dad works at Nissan in Smyrna.
There's this bizarre world.
Wow.
My mom works at Ball State. She's a secretary there. So.
You could act.
Skaters aren't as bad, is there?